Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur or busy individual looking for self-care ideas, you're in the right place.
And we can't wait to share our experiences with you. Hello and welcome back to Thriving Tides. Today we have a really special guest, Jennifer Doherty, owner of JSD Human Resources Consulting. Jennifer is originally from Halifax, and after a 12-year career in human resources in various major cities in Canada, while she never quite feeling at home, Jennifer left her corporate job in Toronto to return to the Maritimes. She followed the popular dream of a simpler life and moved to PEI. Originally, that included a part-time, off-farm jobs, but those soon gave way to full-time farm life with all of its challenges and heartbreaks. She then founded a popular yarn manufacturing business called Fleece and Harmony, and a knitting podcast that went along with it. With that, she found herself working more than ever. The simple life had become very complicated. This prompted another change to return to a career in HR as a consultant. With this change, Jennifer finds herself working much less and feeling much more productive and balanced. In this episode, we connect with Jennifer all about HR, making those big changes, moving from a big city, and talking about self-care and setting boundaries. We hope you enjoy this episode of Thriving Tides. Welcome to the closet, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. This is very cool. Yes.
Yeah, this is our first guest since
I don't
for
even
a long
remember.
time.
It's been a while.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of Zoom because
Yes.
of the COVID.
The COVID.
But I'm really excited that we have our first guest in the studio back.
And a new friend to us,
A new
too.
friend,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the atmosphere feels a little bit just like a slumber party or something, so I'm totally into it. Thriving Tide slumber parties. I like it.
I like that. Yeah, keep that in mind for an
Yes,
episode.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, man.
So we have so many things we want to ask you about.
Awesome. I'm excited. Yeah, I can do a lot of talking, so that should be good.
Awesome. That's great. Why don't we start with just hearing a little bit about your background, because you kind of started a whole bunch of your life in HR and then left it for a while and you're back there again.
Yeah.
So let's just hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a journey. Like, I was a little bit late, I would say, graduating university. So at 26, I finished my education in human resources and I moved out west. I did the Calgary thing for a couple of years. I got some really great experience because it was a pretty challenging candidate market out there at the time. So it was really easy to get a really good job. And so, of course, that's why I went. And I got some great experience out there starting in law firms. I stuck with that for quite a while, did a few other industries. And then I sort of ended up in Toronto eventually. And I just got tired of commuting was probably like the biggest part of the whole thing. And commuting is such a hot topic right now in general for everybody, right?
Yes.
And so my sister was kind of feeling the same. She was in Montreal. So we just decided to buy a farm and move back to the Maritimes where we were originally from. So I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And we did that. And while I was doing that initially, I still worked in human resources. So I did a little bit of consulting. I went to work in-house for a client. And then we decided to develop that into full-time work for the two of us by buying a woolen mill. And we then launched Fleece and Harmony, and which we manufacture local yarn, and we were selling it on a video vlog or a podcast if you want.
Yeah.
And that went pretty well, but I suddenly ended up sort of working more than I had anticipated at that. It was really hard work. Farming is really hard work. And so the vision I had of sort of better work-life balance did not actually come to fruition. In the end, I had gone full circle and was probably about just as stressed out as I was in Toronto.
Really?
Yeah, and I love the business and the industry is amazing and fun, but the model, of my life wasn't really working for me. And I had all kinds of HR experience, and there's not a ton of people who do what I do around here.
Yeah,
and
true.
so I started getting inquiries, people asking me if I would go back into it about a year ago. And so I took a few things and I tried it on, and I just found it really rewarding. And it's just a little bit something that I have a little more control over than being responsible for a big farm and a big manufacturing facility and stuff. And so my sister is carrying on with Lease and Harmony. She really enjoys doing that part, so that's good.
That's awesome.
Everybody has different ways that they want to manage their time or what they find stressful. Other people don't, and that kind of thing. So her and her husband work there together, and they're super content to do it. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to pursue the HR stuff that I've really been enjoying. And so that's a really quick way of, encapsulating about 25 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you always hear of all these people. I know I'm a victim of that too. I've always been like, I just want to have a farm. I'll just be a farmer. I'm just going to have a bunch of animals and it'll be easy. Life will be easy. So I kind of like the simple life. Yeah. So I kind of like that you're like, it's not really.
Yeah. I mean, and I am like an animal lover. So raising animals like as livestock is not stressful for an animal lover.
Really?
Right? Like you see some things.
Oh, no.
Right.
Yeah. You're caring for a lot of lives. Things go wrong. It's possibly through no fault of your own. And I found that pretty difficult. And also the other side of that is that when you move from Toronto with your Toronto income and what you've made from selling your house, you have no idea what it actually costs to properly maintain a 100-acre property. It is not cheap.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Acres.
So because it's so funny because I know a lot of people sort of share that vision where they're like, I'm just going to move out to the country, and we totally did it. But I can tell you, like if you need a set of new culverts and you need your woodlot, remanaged and all that, like you will burn through those Toronto house sale dollars
really fast.
Much faster than you think. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we see so many folks from the cities moving here to the island now too.
Yeah,
not sure it's farming that they're after, but still.
Yeah, and I don't want to discourage it, but if you're going to buy a big property and maintain it properly, it's not cheap.
Yeah,
you can blow through some money getting that all caught up to where you want it to be. We planted pasture, we did fencing, we did the culverts, we did the woodlot.
That's really neat.
It's kind of not what people think. I don't want to discourage it because I think if you want to have a little hobby farm or whatever, but just know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that you did, such a big full circle. But it sounds like you've been able to take what you really enjoyed about the HR world and make that your niche now.
Yeah, and so I come at it from a totally different place now. So when I worked in corporate HR, even when I was in consulting for a bit and then let's say went in-house for a client, I did not have small business experience. I hadn't run a manufacturing business for 6 years. I didn't understand the stresses of being an entrepreneur. You're an employee. I was an employee in all of those jobs. We did well this quarter. We didn't do well that quarter. It meant something to me, but it did not mean what it means to me now.
Right. Didn't hit the bank account the same way.
Yeah, like that does hit your pocketbook. Yes, when you're an owner. And so it's kind of a little bit sad to think of how many people work in corporations and they don't understand how the profit and loss works. They sort of don't understand where they fit in that whole scheme. And I think that's really, really important. And it's difficult to get across because part of what makes it so pertinent is the level of risk that you assume as being an owner that an employee will never really understand. Like the pressure of trying to make payroll. It's very stressful, So I really enjoy the HR work more now, and I have a totally different perspective of it on it because of my business experience, and I just see everything in a totally different light, and I find it's really rewarding for me to be able to have those conversations with my clients who are entrepreneurs and small business owners in a way where we're speaking like a common language.
Right, yeah, because you understand where they're coming from and stuff.
There's stressors, Yeah, that they can't necessarily talk about with employees, but I feel, a lot of what they're going through because I've been there. So it's really changed my approach to HR in a lot of great ways.
Did that make you also kind of like apprehensive or nervous to do your own like HR company after Lease and Harmony?
I'd say I was pretty nervous.
Were you? Yeah.
Like we had cash flow, that's good. That's nice. So to really make the break though, I had to free up full time to work on it. You can't do it without marketing it. You have to make that break at some point. It's pretty scary. I would say this is probably the third or fourth time that I've tried to go out on my own. And this is the first time I've stuck with it to the point where I know it's going to work. Because I'm used to being an employee. I have an education in employment security in a lot of ways. HR people teach, your RSP and your pension. And these are all the things that we preach about. And it's like, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, just say goodbye to all of that. Right.
Yeah.
And so that is so ingrained in me, like the security of what employment has to offer, that it's a pretty hard thing to give up. But I had some really supportive colleagues and friends and people who were referring business to me that were like, do not panic. Just don't start applying for jobs.
Yes.
Just stick with it.
We have this conversation all the time.
Yeah. It's like, give it, 4 to 6 months. Yeah. And so I gave it the 4 to 6 months in terms of like me doing it full time, because it's been almost a year now that I've been back in it. And, I can proudly say I have made it past the panic point, and hopefully I do, last from here. But
amazing.
Yeah, not a lot of temptation to go back into traditional, like a work environment, mostly because this way I get to help so many more people. Like I get to solve more problems because I'm in a bunch of different environments instead of just one where you would just be maybe maintaining systems that are already working and things like that. So kind of spreading it around.
Get to go put out the fires.
Yeah. Yeah.
or hopefully just set a solid foundation so no fires begin.
Yeah. And like I'm crazy obsessed with just business.
Yeah.
Like I like learning about other business models and hearing other people's stories. And you really get a lot of that when you work in consulting, because you meet just so many different types of people and you get involved in so many different businesses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to back up to something that you just said where, it was kind of your third or fourth go at this. What have you learned in those different tries, and like what is it that made it stick this time?
Well, you just have to have faith in yourself. It's a lot of courage, just a lot of courage. And I had people who were like, relax, like you can do this. And it's habit, you're used to feeling a certain way about work. You're used to having things work a certain way in your life, steady paycheck, or at least steady cash flow or whatever. And I was fortunate that being a small business owner, I had learned to live on less already, to an extent, because you do have to pretty much reinvest everything back into the business for the first few years, right? And so I was in a place where I felt, well, I don't need to do that well right out of the gate. I can go for that 4 to 6 months and at least give it a chance. And to be honest with you, I had a good income tax refund. That helps. That's kind of what I built my business on, right? It's like you probably do need to have a little bit of cash set aside to survive, and then it was literally like, I have the 4 months. Let's just see how it goes. But
the jump. Yeah.
But month 1, month 2, month 3, I was like, should I apply? Should I? And there's like so many jobs out there right now, as you know. Yeah. So it just takes a lot of courage. You have to believe in yourself, and work through the times when you don't, because we're not all going to be 100% confident all the time, right? You got to get a little bit comfortable in your discomfort.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's so worth it if that's what you want to do. It's necessary. You're never going to leave and go out on your own and feel completely secure. That's a ridiculous idea.
Oh,
right?
man. I couldn't imagine. I'm like, what is that? What would they even be like?
Yeah.
I think in the fear or just like that, like scariness too, is where we get our biggest leaps and bounds and where we get our greatest growth too, right? If we just felt really secure all the time, like we wouldn't be open to taking those risks, or I guess, I don't know, just feels a little flat.
I mean, that's the one other thing that's amazing about having been a small business owner is the resilience you build, the perspective on what's a big problem and what's a small problem. Farming, which is something that I did, it's not every entrepreneur would experience that. But then if you add the farming part onto it, where you have life and death situations that you're dealing with in animals and stuff, that really puts things in a different perspective. So it's just been like a great rounding out experience for me to have gone through all of this. I wouldn't change any of it, but I'm really happy to be where I am now.
That's awesome. Do you miss working for like the corporate world at all, or are you very content in being a solo entrepreneur?
I'm pretty darn content.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll hear I'm hearing a lot, the gig economy. Like, this is the way people are going to want to use their skills to benefit their life. In my opinion, it's part of what's contributing to the difficulty in finding permanent candidates for employers, because once you have a taste of being able to, frankly, set your price, set your hours, and you get past those initial 4 to 6 months of like sheer terror. Yeah. Let's face it, at times, it's a pretty good place to be. It's a much more free market.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you regain a lot of control over your life. So, I mean, it is scary. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for everyone. I don't have children. That's certainly made it easier. But I think once you get a taste of that independence, if you're somebody who likes that and doesn't necessarily require a ton of security, or and you're in a place where you can afford to take a bit of a risk, it's a pretty good place to be. I can't see me ever going back.
Yeah. No,
So-
that's completely fair, especially in like the bigger cities and stuff like that. It's almost kind of like its own culture in a sense. Like, I know you've worked a lot in the big cities,
Yeah.
corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah, I did Calgary for 10 years. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I loved Calgary.
Oh, me
I mean,
too.
that's a great place. I think if I ever
Yeah.
went anywhere again, it would be there. It's
Yeah.
a great place
It's a
to
big
live.
city that doesn't feel like a big city.
Yeah, and gosh, the air is so fresh. And, when I was there, the traffic wasn't too terrible. And
Yeah.
it's relatively affordable, to be honest,
Yes.
compared to Toronto or Vancouver or some other places. And you have everything right there. So yeah, but I can't see me being an employee again.
Yeah,
fair.
it's hard to imagine. That's a conversation I had with myself just recently too. It's just like, I think the gig economy too, right? It's that opportunity to continuously evolve as well, in as you grow or as you learn more things, and there's no one else dictating like this is your role and this is the box that you stay in. And I
True.
think that's like scary, but also so very exciting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you can branch out into things that you develop a new passion for that you may have never been exposed to before, or even if you were, you'd be like, oh, I want to go work over there now, and there's somebody there to be like, no, that was your temporary project,
Right.
and now you're back over here, you know,
Yes.
so
yeah.
that can be really demotivating. Yeah, so.
I would love to hear. So you've been in HR for a long time. What would you tell a small business owner or an entrepreneur about why HR practices and policies are important, and, rather than waiting until there's an issue, that, it's something that should be on their minds from day one, even if they're a solopreneur without even a team yet?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, something I learned being a business owner that, again, would be a little bit different from somebody who hadn't been an entrepreneur, is that an employee, while being very helpful, and it's good to leverage your time where it's most valued, and so it's good to delegate things to people who can do things that the owner doesn't necessarily need to do or isn't the best use of their time. Employees are a huge commitment, a responsibility, and in some ways a liability. So I think you have to be really careful about when you decide to bring them on, because you have to be really sure that that's something you want to take on and that it's needed, so that you don't end up, overcomplicating things before it's time. Some people wait too long, and then that really impacts your ability to grow, because you're trying to do everything as an owner. That's just as bad. So I would say the timing is really, really crucial. And then a big mistake that a lot of small business owners make is that because they're small, they treat it much more like a family or a friendly type of thing. And a friend of mine put it really well last week at a dinner and said, at its core, it's a contractual relationship. And there are legal obligations on both sides of that, certainly on the hiring side. And as wonderful as it seems to treat those people as friends and think we're only small, we don't need a formal offer letter, we don't need policies, we don't need rules, that is great when everybody's happy and getting along. But by the minute you figure out that you're not getting along and everyone isn't great, if you don't have those tools in place, it will complicate your life to a degree that you will seriously regret. And then it's just like nothing's proper. And so you don't have any of the tools that are put in place for a reason, with legislation, for example, at your disposal. You've got nothing.
Right.
And you've got a lot of confusion around boundaries and roles. And it makes it very difficult to work through issues when everybody's not on equal. They don't. Their footing is not even determined. It's like, am I an employee? Am I a friend? Am I family? Like, what am I? And then they can, when it's not clear, they can flip through roles. They can behave like an employee when they feel like it. They can behave like a friend when they feel like it. And you might want them to be behaving like an employee, and they might want to be, in that instance, behaving like a friend. And then you get just the amount of conflict that it creates.
Oh, yeah.
And stress. And so I would say that it's really important, the timing, and then make sure that you do it right, no matter how small you are. At least have something in place. Yeah. At the end of the day, even if you don't think it's a contractual relationship, the law does.
Yeah. Don't fight the law.
Yeah. And so when you wade into that without things being clear, it can just create a ton of problems. Yeah.
Do you see that? Like, I'm just thinking about the landscape of PEI, and where, we're 2 degrees of separation maybe here. Do you see that a lot more in these smaller businesses that you're working with? And
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
it's probably like my neighbor's kid and I hired them to do this, or, they're my cousin or whatever.
And I think Prince Edward Island has developed kind of a system around that, how that's sorted out. There's like a natural, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's sort of been evolved to have ways of dealing with that. But I personally think it creates a lot of stress. I think that they're probably used to it.
Right.
And they don't understand that it probably doesn't need to be that stressful. I mean, there are consultants who just work with family businesses to try to get them to communicate better. A lot of the problems crop up in second, third generation. Because of course, when everything started, there was a shared vision, but when people grow into it, or inherit it or whatever, there's absolutely no guarantee that all the parties are on the same page from the beginning.
Right.
But to me, I think on PEI, it's almost a way of life.
Yeah.
But for someone like me, who's for one, not from here and has mostly corporate experience, it can be pretty bizarre. It's a little bit, to me, it seems very stressful.
Yeah.
I would prefer to have it a lot simpler.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, I'm a second generation, like my brother and I bought our family business from our dad, so laugh.
Yeah. Well,
and it's mostly great, but there are things that come up, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, we had that conversation at the accounting office and I remember it one way or Jamie remembers it another way, and there's just little things
I think what makes it hard is when people do flip roles mid-conversation.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of came at the perspective, because mine was a family business too. I was in business with my sister, and it's like, which hat are we going to wear for this conversation?
Yeah.
And I think if you can kind of manage that, at least it makes it a little bit easier. But I don't see a lot of people necessarily doing it that way. I think they're kind of going down a road, and they're the boss one minute, the sibling the next, and then that really makes it really difficult to sort through those issues and get to the root of the problem. Like, is it a business problem or is it a sibling problem? Like what are we talking about here?
Way back.
Yeah, but I think honestly, like, having a third party sometimes to do a little bit of mediation or guide some of those conversations would be well worth the investment. Right? Because you want to preserve the relationship, both sets of relationships.
Yes.
And that's pretty tricky to pull off on your own.
So you don't want to lose your business and your family member and or friend.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
None of it. You don't want to lose any of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think either having some deliberate study around, methods of communicating more effectively and keeping those conversations on track or anything like that would help, or having a third party involved. And like I said, there are consultants who just literally do that.
Yeah.
They sit in on a family business conversations.
Yeah.
And they're mediators, essentially. But you learn something through that process. You learn better communication skills, and then maybe you won't always need it, but you learn a different and more effective way of interacting with each other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you find that you do that sometimes? Like, I know you don't specialize in that, but...
Media, I think I work a lot with people around communication skills in the sense that there can be some brilliant business owners who are just painfully conflict avoidant. And conflict avoidance is not something to aspire to, right? Like,
No.
I've learned this. People
Yeah.
think that that's a compliment, that they're
Yeah.
conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
I don't mean easy to get along with. I mean, when something comes up, you turn and run.
Yeah. Or
Like,
bury your
that's
head in the sand.
conflict avoidant does not mean nice.
Yes.
It means you will avoid anything that you don't agree with the other person on. And
Right.
that is impossible.
Yes.
You know, it's impossible in
Absolutely.
families and it's impossible in business. And it will absolutely build up and it will create resentment. And issues need to be dealt with as soon as possible while they're small, you know?
Yes.
And so I think I don't do a lot of mediation. And I actually don't work with a lot of family businesses at the current time. But I think that I do work with people a lot on just not being so panicked when they have to have a conversation that maybe has a little bit of conflict. Sometimes it's not even a big thing.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
literally can't say the simplest thing to another person without feeling like, you know, they're going to get angry at them. And it's,
Yeah.
I don't want to do any conflict at
Yeah.
all. So I'm just like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
yeah.
Another way.
Yeah. And it's often that first out breath that is the hardest. And then once that's done, it's not so scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is we build it up in our minds and then the emotion leads, right? Because
Yes.
if you're already afraid
Yeah.
because you want to avoid it,
Yeah.
that's not a great way to start out on a conversation like that. So I think it's kind of like stick to the facts, realize that you're just trying to resolve something. And I always try to tell people, like, look at this way. You're giving them the opportunity to sort something out. You're giving them the respect of giving them a chance to respond to how you're feeling. Otherwise, you're just making all kinds of assumptions and you're robbing them of the opportunity to possibly reach agreement with you.
Yes.
You're just making the assumption that they're going to hate your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually not really fair when you think about it, right?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I try to encourage open communication and listening.
Yeah.
You know, like when somebody comes to you with something, because you know yourself how terrifying that is. So think about the other person actually coming forward with that, what they had to go through, and then listen, because they're trying to help you by improving your relationship. So listen and appreciate that they probably went through a little bit of stress to even be able to bring this to you,
Yeah.
and just give them the respect for having that courage, right? So
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, I am not perfect at it, but in theory, you know, that's what I aspire to. Yeah.
Great.
So speaking about communication, would you have any quick tips on how to be a better communicator, if you will?
Oh, well, I think some of I think starting the conversation sometimes is the easier part. It's how communication is received that often creates a lot of issues. So I think what I would do is ask myself, how do I receive information? Like what I just said, when somebody comes to you with something, what is your initial reaction? And can you sort of learn to respect the fact that it, like just what I said, you know, it's taking courage to come to you, try to be curious about, you know, what brought you to this place, that there's something where you need to talk about, and just kind of approach it from a place of really listening and trying to understand. And, you know, it's like a cliche, right? Like most people listen to respond and they should be, you know, listening to understand or whatever that saying is. But
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you can practice, just practice, you know, you feel yourself. I mean, I am human, you know, like it happens. I'm like, oh, you know, like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
really like that. And then just be like, you know, but they came to me with something. It's not to be ignored. I have to really listen. They respect me enough to try to maintain the relationship. You know, I think in organizations, the opposite is either someone gets fired or someone quits and nobody understands why. Like that doesn't seem better to me.
No,
Yeah.
that's not
Like,
like that.
party.
It's probably just gonna keep happening with the next person that comes in
Yeah,
their place.
and then
too.
I think the thing is that do approach it when it's small, because small things become big things. And so I always say, you know, someone will do something. It could be something ridiculous, like wear a sweater you hate, you know, just see a personal example. And you're just like, oh, I don't like that sweater, you know, and then the next time you wear it, you're like, I really don't like that. You know,
Yeah.
when you start to feel that feeling,
Yeah,
just
you
address
can-
it
yeah,
then.
it's like I feel it usually in my chest. I think some
Yeah.
people get that like in their gut. And,
Yeah. And so what I always say, like, recognize that, like, recognize the feeling of tension and resentment building, because we typically push it down And when you need to try to address that. Now, everyone will not receive it in the way I'm suggesting.
Right.
But you tried. And you've done it under the guise of under the intention of trying to improve the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you're coming. So your intention is sincere.
Yes.
And so you can only do so much, but I find a lot of people need to work more on receiving even more than they do on delivering.
Yeah.
Right. That's the hard part in a
That's to
sense.
say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Confrontation with me and receiving confrontation or anything, I'm just like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people are just criers, like, and that's, and it's kind of learning to accept that too of yourself, but then other people can get so uncomfortable with it. But it's just
And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just my family, or maybe it's partly the Scottish culture that I was raised in, or whatever. But for heaven's sake, learn to apologize. The
Goes a
stress
long way.
that people internalize because they refuse to apologize, and they know they should, but they literally cannot say those two words for some reason. I don't know if you can relate to this. It's definitely a thing, in a lot of the people that I have grown up around and been with. And it's like, if you're sorry, just say you're sorry. I mean, a lot of times you realize you're sorry, but you just can't say it. And it's like, just
like
get
you're
past
too proud
that.
or like,
And then, I mean, that obviously does wonders. I mean, apologies. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
everyone likes to
thing.
apologize.
Yeah.
For
they
a reason.
exist.
Yeah. So, but I it's hard. I wasn't raised around a family that said I'm sorry a lot. It just comes from whatever your parents teach you.
Yeah.
And we weren't big I'm sorry people. We were kind of like, oh, well, it's over now. Get on with it.
Yeah, let's not talk
people.
about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably not the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think a nice, sincere apology will make your life less stressful, even though it's something to get used to.
Yeah, that's fair. There's always growth in that discomfort, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit more about your transition, Jennifer, into like operating your own business, and like, where did you find the courage to say, like, you know what, like, enough with being an employee. I'm going to do this. Tell us about some of the lessons that you've maybe learned along the way too.
Well, I think that I have a very like entrepreneurial spirit. So I was a good employee. I've never been let go. I worked hard, but it never felt super awesome to me. And so again, like, that building discomfort, or it wasn't really resentment, but I always just felt like I was just a very independent person. But again, you have that security that you're taught to seek, and that is comfortable in a lot of ways. And so, but I'm also a really courageous person for the most part, and I don't have an issue with risk. Like, I've taken some pretty big risks in my life. Some people would call me a little bit reckless when I was younger. I'd say
this was just like all training ground for where you are today.
I'd say it's pretty much more moderated at this point. But like, I've always been a bit of a courageous person. I didn't realize that. The funny thing is when I worked for Rogers Media when I left Toronto, and they owned Châtelet magazine, and I actually got interviewed when everybody found out I was leaving to buy a farm. They were like, wow, we need to get her. Let's put her. It was just in Châtelet online. It wasn't in a print issue, but and it's like, okay, great. It's like, I'm going to talk about why I'm leaving the company who owns the magazine. This is not too awkward, but I was trying to be diplomatic about it. But when the writer wrote the article, she said, if you don't have Jennifer's courage yet, and then I realized, courage, that is pretty much what it takes. And you have to be able to recognize where you're not comfortable. Like, don't be miserable until 65. Like, I can tell you from running benefits plans and pensions that you do not want to do that, because a surprising number of people don't get the number of years in retirement that they think they're going to. It sounds really depressing, but it's true.
Yeah.
And so
many people just bank on that. Oh, just 10 more years, I can do this.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
that is
still
really?
10 more years.
That is not a way to live for a week.
Oh, it's devastating.
Yeah. And again, it just depends on what you like. There are definitely people who like different things. But for me, I always felt just more independent. And it was hard for me to deal with organizations where everybody wasn't super respectful, to be honest with you. Like when you get in an organization, there's a hierarchy, particularly in law firms. I mean, I worked for Bay Street litigators. These are not people you want to get into arguments with, okay? And if they didn't agree with something I did, they were brutal. And there was not a darn thing I could do about it. HR or not. They signed my paycheck. They're partners.
Right.
They are worth, $1 to $3 million a year to the company. I cost the company money. Like that really bothered me. To be expected to accept disrespect, which happens a lot in organizations. To this day, I've had conversations about this week. I just bristled against that. I mean, that was just not comfortable for me. And I've had bosses who were very happy with my performance be kind of like, I don't know if you're cut out for law firms because you pretty much have to zip it.
You're like, no zipping it here.
I'm like, okay,
that's not who I am.
It just eats away at you. So it wasn't super enjoyable. And I mean, I was in some pretty tough environments, like probably, Bay Street law firms are not where you want to start out if you're a sensitive person or whatever. It's can be pretty tough. So, I mean, I probably tolerated a lot more than some people, but I always just kind of felt like I don't really want to have to tolerate this, to be honest. I was well paid, but it just didn't feel right to me. I don't agree with disrespect, no matter what my position is in the company or how much you make for it. And unfortunately, that's just not the culture in those organizations. They'll make you care. Right. So
especially since our last episode of company culture and stuff like that.
We talk a lot about that.
I mean, that's the thing right now. If you don't have a place, an environment where people enjoy going to, you are going to have a really hard time keeping people in this market, and the word will get out. It doesn't matter how far and wide you go look for people. Employees are on alert and they want to feel good going into work every day.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard the market right now to find employees is already difficult as it is.
It's downright nearly impossible for some roles.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I am really hesitant to accept any work recruiting right now because I am not a miracle worker. And I think if you are smart, you will want to become the ultimate employer of choice in the industry and the candidate market that you're in. And that is the only way to go. And you just better hope that everybody else doesn't work as hard at it as you do.
Right.
Because when people talk about, especially in a small place like this, so if people are thinking about which accounting firm or which law firm or which retail store or which restaurant to go work in, the word of mouth is going to have to be that you're one of the best because there's only enough employees to staff the best.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and right now, so many of them are short-staffed already that when you're working your staff like that, how do you become the best, or how do you be seen as that? Because everyone's just exhausted.
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like, listen, like I'm not saying that come into a business, you're an entrepreneur, your stress level is already incredibly high, depending on where you are in your business growth or your cash flow or whatever. It's a concerted daily effort. You have to, quiet your own insecurities, fears, stresses, anger, frustration, so that they don't see that. I would suggest like having some outside support, and so that you aren't tempted to sort of bring your own stress down onto your employees, which also happens a lot. And in the past, you could probably get away with that a little bit. But if you're adding stress to your employee's life at this point, it's just not going to work.
They're going to break.
Yeah, it's just not going to work. Again, like it is isolating being an entrepreneur. So I would suggest, like having a support network or working with consultants. It's money well spent just to make sure that, because there's no point like losing yourself either, right? But the fact is that employees cannot absorb any of that stress and frustration right now, and they will choose not to. Yeah.
Well, and do you find, because I'm naive in some of this because I haven't had to or spent the time looking into it, but CERB is the biggest complaint that I'm hearing from a lot of people, is that, so many employees are just continuing to collect CERB when they could be working. And with a lot of the industries here, I think pay probably is quite similar to collecting that versus going and working for a place that you're miserable at. I probably would choose the former as well, right?
Yeah.
Is that...
And
like,
I mean,
what are the
that's not
biggest
going to
things
last
you're
forever,
coming-
and there's no labor market data. You know, the labor economics is a whole entire field of study that you can get a PhD in, and I certainly don't have it. I've taken a few classes as part of one of my degrees in human resources, but I actually, for a small part of the population, maybe that's it, but I think it's more the gig economy. People's lives were turned upside down. Their priorities have shifted.
Yes.
They might be like, do I need to go on 2 vacations a year, or would I prefer just to work 30 hours instead of 40?
Right.
Like, probably the money is better spent not on the Amalfi Coast, but in my home, not running my butt off, you know, the other 50 weeks of the year. And so, and they've learned to live with less. And so the one informal survey I saw that came out about this matter, it was like financial reasons was at the bottom of the list, but fulfillment was way at the top.
That actually makes me really happy, though, that
totally.
people's priorities have shifted to that. And it's like, I just want a full life.
Yeah.
I don't need to make 6 figures. I don't need, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and here's another thing that I'm seeing a lot, because I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. It's part of my job to market my business through LinkedIn. I am on there on a daily basis. That's like my Facebook. Like, I don't do Facebook. I do LinkedIn. I don't do Instagram anymore. I do LinkedIn.
I love seeing, I've been on a social media hiatus, but every now and then I see your posts and I'm like, oh man, she's smart.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you. But, like, this is what employers have to keep in mind. Free time is the new status symbol.
Yeah.
And I agree. You know, for me, it sure is. Like, ask me, I brought so many clothes and shoes from Toronto. I still have not run out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? Like, and I mean, granted, I didn't wear a lot of them on the farm.
You
but
didn't?
Like,
wearing your heels around the farm?
But, like, I just ran out of jeans, like, maybe 2 years ago. Like, where did all that money go? And would I not have rather been in my hammock than had those $260 designer jeans?
Oh, like, the things we learn.
It's been wrong for people. It's been wrong for life. It's been wrong for a lifestyle. Like, if you make so much that's like not a huge sacrifice, then more power to you. But people, you know, spending hours and hours and hours of their life just so that they can earn status symbols and stuff, I think that's changed a lot. I think free time is the new status symbol. Being in control of your life and happy is the new status symbol. Like, who doesn't envy somebody who seems genuinely fulfilled and happy in their life? It's when you can't get those things, or you don't feel the control to be able to get those things, that you go out and you buy other things that you're hoping will replace that, but it never does. I mean, I was there, right? Like, I earned to shop. And I mean, I earned a lot of money, right? Like,
we had this conversation with you before.
Like, I mean, I made not a huge amount of money by Toronto standards, but a good amount of money by most people's standards. And I would just go out every weekend and spend it.
Yeah.
You know, I could have put it aside. I could be retired by now, you know, but, and so I think people are getting a lot smarter.
Those nice jeans.
Yeah. Which may or may not have fit on any given week, right? Like, so I had to have 12 pairs, and depending on how stressed out I was. Sometimes they were too big, sometimes they were too small.
Do you think this shift to, like, the new, like, status people are looking for of free time, is this purely because of what we went through with COVID, or do you think this shift was coming with the next generation and maybe this just like made it go faster?
Yeah, I would say,
because I was starting to see a little bit of it, I think, when I was still working corporate as well.
Yeah, I think it fast-tracked it. And it scooped up a lot of other generations. Like, I mean, I'm by no means a young person, you know, I'm middle-aged. So I would say it's a bit of a perfect storm situation, but like in a good way.
It excites me. Like, I had a call with my coach today, and I was talking about the fact that, like, this month, like September, I just really need to slow down and figure out what I want in life and what I want to do with my business. And I was like, what scares me the most is what other people are going to think of if I've just like, I just, you know, took the morning off and went for a hike, or, you know, like, I'm just doing the things that really fill me up instead of working. And she put the question back to me of like, what if the most important thing you do that day, though, is your hike, right? Like, what if that is what you need to fill you up to do it, right? And like, just trying to shift that mentality and not really care, but touching on what you said too, like other people would probably envy it,
Mm-hmm.
but we can misconstrue that envy as people judging us too, right?
Oh
like,
gosh, yeah, like the guilt is real. Like I
Yeah.
still struggle with that. You know, I feel like lazy, you know, at times because it's certainly not how I was brought through my career, like up to this point. But, you know, you just got to get tapped into the right community where they get it, where they understand it. I mean, this is part of my LinkedIn community. You know, like I have people on there who are very successful people running small businesses that have enviable amounts of revenue.
Mhm.
And they're like, I'm only working an hour today. You know, and you're just like, wowza.
Love
So,
it.
I mean, the
Yeah.
word is out.
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of depends on the circles that you move in. But, and I mean, that said, I still feel the guilt because that's how I was raised. And that's how I started, you know, what work meant through most of my career. Right.
Mm.
I mean, like, I remember specifically shortly before I left to move back here, feeling horribly guilty about writing my biggest client, like the head of my biggest client group in Rogers on December 24th at 4:30 because my family had just flown in from the Maritimes, and I was like, I'm signing off now. You know, and it was just like, yeah, I was just like, just put the BlackBerry over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and it was
I'll just leave
like,
it on vibrate. Though,
Yeah,
just in case.
I'll check it later.
Yeah.
It was a struggle.
Yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot have my parents sit here and watch me work.
Right.
And I cannot write to him and tell him I'm signing off. And he's still asking me to correct people's pay and stuff that will never be fixed on December 25th.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, there was a saying around there, like, we all sleep with our Blackberries under our pillow. And it is not far from the truth.
Yeah.
I had the phantom Blackberry butt.
Yeah.
You know, I had the knotted up thumbs that like
Yes.
required massage therapy.
Yeah.
You know, like literally.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've come a long way,
Yeah.
right? But you know, baby steps. But yeah, I do actually, with this last transition, I've taken a lot of time for myself.
That's
I really
awesome.
have. I mean, I don't always feel great about it, but I know when I need it.
Mm.
You know, I'm starting to at least recognize that because a lot of people don't even recognize when they need it. They're just on like autopilot.
Yeah.
And I think you need to tune into your body. And what I discovered, like with the yarn business in particular, was when I did take some time off, I came back so much better.
Mm.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, we are not, like, even phones need recharging, for heaven's sake. Like, 8 hours
Yeah.
of sleep is not enough. You
No.
know, you will be more productive for the following week, you know? So,
Yes.
and I think there's like, I can't quote any specifically, but I think if you looked into it, there's all kinds of, you know, organizational behavioral studies, like scientific studies that will prove that overworking yourself does not create more productivity. It actually
Yeah.
makes you less productive because if
Yeah.
you're only operating at 60% capacity all the time, like you do the math,
Yeah.
it's not getting you ahead. For appearance's sake, it looks
Mm.
possibly good to those people who would normally judge people who leave at 5 to 5 or whatever, but
Yeah.
in truth, I think there's lots of scientific data out there that have been done. It's been studies that have been done by industrial organizational psychologists that will tell you that you're not getting ahead.
Exactly.
You may look like a superstar, but you're actually not, and you're killing yourself most
Yeah.
likely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And from
Yeah.
an HR perspective, to your employees, making them feel like they have to live to that standard too, probably is also not going to be good for your business in the long run.
No, and a
either.
lot of people will do that. You know, I mean, like a thing that was going around when I first started my career in my 20s was like, you know, never leave before your boss. Holy smoke. I mean, I just dismissed
Might as
that
well
right
just
from the
sleep
get-go.
under your desk.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, and then there's competition amongst the team.
Yeah.
You know, well, I left even later than the boss. You did than
Yeah.
the boss. You know, like, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, it's so
Like, what a
unhealthy.
waste. Yeah.
And half the time they're just sitting there for the sake of sitting there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They might be waiting until maybe they have like a dinner meeting later. And
Yeah.
they're just like killing
I
time.
mean, that
or
is not
they
a
don't
way
like
to
their
live.
home
It's
life,
really
so
not.
they're not going home. Like, who knows, right?
I mean, that's different. In that case, maybe it's beneficial. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was a whole culture when I started, you know, my career, and I was never one to work a lot of overtime. I
Yeah.
can't put in. I'm just not a sucky up kind of person.
Yeah.
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 Just never have been. Like, if I don't have something to do that's urgent, then why would I just sit here? Like,
Absolutely.
I have always
Yeah.
had other life, you know, hobbies and things that I like
Mhm.
to play at, or maybe I had a lot of shopping to go do. I don't know. But I've never really just been one to sit there for the sake of sitting there, but lots of people have been.
Yeah, that's fair. Huh. I love, and now too, like, you are your own boss.
Yeah.
So you can't suck up to yourself.
No,
Well, you
no.
could, and there's no, I'm guessing there's not that competition anymore either, right? Because you don't have peers that are sitting around and like, what's going on? So it's like, this is what I need to do today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty self-motivated, but I also I'm like an extremely high energy person. I
Yeah.
always say it takes a lot of energy to be me all day. You know, when we were coming up here, I was like, I hope the audio levels are going to be okay, because I feel like I'm the person who yells into Zoom all day. And by the end of it, I'm like exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but yeah, I'm my own boss now. I only have to deal with my internal struggles about, you know, if I deserve or can afford to take a couple hours to go do something else. And I have to watch, you know, I have clients that I'm accountable to with deadlines and things, but so far I'm finding it pretty easy to manage. And by the same token, because I'm in control of it all, if I want to do something in the afternoon and then I have to work until 10 p.m. that night, well, that's my choice.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't seem like a big deal working in the evening when you've bargained with yourself to be able to do that. It doesn't bother me. Every day is mine, you know, to choose when I want to do the work. And that is actually very liberating too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really cool. When we were talking before the episode and you said, you know, you've been working on kind of building that mindset and that practice of working less, yet being more productive. Can you tell us a little bit about how that shift has worked for you, or some tips you might give to those who are trying to do the same?
I think a lot of it has to do with just recognizing what works for you, like really taking the time to think about, it doesn't feel like a big shift. It's kind of like being in tune with your natural rhythms. You know what I mean? So I still work quite a bit, but I do it in a different way. And if I don't rest, I am not productive. I cannot concentrate. I need my sleep. Again, I'm like a super high energy person. I can't do this for 16 hours a day. You know, I know that. I probably should have had a nap before I even attempted this interview. Like I just get in tune with your own what works for you, and then you don't have to feel so bad about it because you're just developing a new system. There's nothing that says 9 to 5 is what you have to do when you run your own business. So I think the thing is just recognize that you do have to put in a certain number of hours in the week, most likely. Like I have clients on fractional contracts. I owe them a certain amount of work every week. I don't overbook myself. I don't get over ambitious where I was like, oh, well, I could make more this month if I try to squeeze out. Like just say no.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, like I think
I was like, that hit you hard, didn't it?
Like I think boundaries, you know, boundaries on your time, boundaries on how far you'll push yourself, boundaries on how you'll let other people treat you, boundaries on what you're prepared to compromise in your life that's my version of self-care. Like yoga and hot baths are great.
Yeah.
Boundaries will refresh you a lot more. You know, when you get really, it's kind of like the communication thing though. You have to get in the habit of really protecting those. And most people won't, you know, most of us are people pleasers. I mean, some people would say, especially women, I don't know if that's scientifically proven or not, but if you are someone who is a people pleaser, that is something to get used to. It's very challenging. You will feel judged. It may change relationships that you're in or have been in for a long time. Yeah. But it's the best form of self-care. Yeah. You know, you're looking after yourself. You're being your own protector. And I think a lot of it solves a lot of problems, reduces a lot of stress once you get used to it, because it is stressful setting boundaries with people you've never set boundaries with before. Yeah. And getting over the guilt of some things that you've been, you know, groomed to accept your whole life, especially by the time you're my age, you know, but yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. I'm just learning what works for me, and I'm still figuring it out. You know, like I didn't expect to be this busy before summer was over. So I'm like, well, there goes the beach time. But, you know, I just kind of rolled with it. I was really, really, really grateful to be busy at this point. But, you know, 3 years from now, I will still be looking probably to work, maybe not as much.
Exactly.
You know, especially like next summer might be different. You know, if I have better cash flow and I feel more secure and I have a bunch of understanding clients and I've set the boundaries with them that I will be working less over the summer or whatever, then, you know, I'll feel comfortable doing that because I will have had all this good practice. But for now, I'm okay to, you know, to work a fair amount, probably more than I planned because like the 4 to 6 months aren't even up yet that I mentioned earlier to build a business. But a lot of people need help right now in their business with HR stuff. So, you know, and I'm just so grateful for everybody who contacts me with work, you know, because a few short months ago, I was like, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do, you know, if this doesn't work out? And now I'm definitely past that. So it's a great feeling. Yeah.
It's cool.
So besides setting boundaries for yourself and for your self-care, what else do you do self-care wise?
So another thing I did that was pretty risky and difficult was while I was, you know, waiting for the onslaught of clients that I was hoping was coming my way, is I did a lot of sort of self-enriching activities. Things that some people would say I probably should not have spent the money on, you know, in my 3 to 6 month building period. But, you know, I tried to stay busy. Yeah. So it really helped me to do things. Like I tried a couple days where I just kind of was like, I can nap if I want. And, you know, and I was like, laying around with too much time to think right now is not what I need. Yeah. And so I joined a bunch of mastermind groups. Mastermind groups are amazing. So you get to go and just chat with other, you know, the one I'm in particular that I love is all for founders and entrepreneurs. Incredible. You could spend all day in there learning. The people are extremely generous with their time. I talked to a lot of other founders and entrepreneurs, other consultants who were exactly where I was, you know, trying to build their business. That was, you know, it was like $125 a month, you know. I was like, whoa, like that's crazy, irresponsible right now. But I went ahead and did it because I thought, you know what, it's going to keep me busy. It's going to keep my brain engaged and I'm probably going to learn a few things and maybe I'll meet some clients. And I did, you know, I found some clients in there. That's not why I signed up, but you connect with people. And then I signed up for a critical thinking and writing class, which was even more expensive. And I did feel really guilty about spending the money on those two things. But the truth is I've actually gotten work through doing both of them because I think you're working on yourself. You naturally become a better product. You know, I am my product. Yes. I am my consulting approach is my personality. And you need to figure out a way to get that out. And so I use some of those critical writing skills and thinking and writing skills on my LinkedIn now. People have responded really well to it. I've always wanted to do a little bit of writing, like not sit down and write a novel or anything, but I've always enjoyed, you know, expressing myself in written form. Yes. I'm like the long email person, like don't call me, but I will spend 4 hours crafting like the perfect email. And so I get a chance to kind of indulge that. But I mean, I felt bad spending the money. I'm not going to lie. I felt really bad, but it was better than sitting there going crazy and starting to think about maybe if this wasn't going to work. And then before I knew it, you know, it's now, you know, paid for and it's paid for itself.
That's really cool.
It became an investment into yourself as well.
Well, that's so true. Like, you know, you should invest in yourself. And it felt a little bit like being a bit crazy. Yeah. Because I had essentially no income, but it's definitely, I took the chance and it was definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. So I think just in life in general, even if you're not going out on your own as an entrepreneur and you don't have, you know, tightened purse strings for a period of time, like always do that. Always be learning something. Yeah. Because it keeps you young. It keeps your brain active. It keeps you feeling like you're growing, you know? So I think I'm really glad I did it. I mean, one of them in particular has definitely paid for it. I think I would say they both have now. Because you just get out and you meet a bunch of people. And I was like taking everybody I knew to lunch and coffee. Yeah. And I mean, now they're like, what happened to you? I thought we were going to go every week. And
like, I'm actually really busy now.
I wish I could. Yeah. And I set some goals for myself. So I set, you know, like do so many, like get out of the house so many times a week. do something, proactive around marketing so many times a week, take this course or do this or that. So I set goals for myself that just made me feel like I knew what I was going to do every day when I woke up.
That's cool.
I had purpose. You got to wake up with purpose. Oh my goodness. I mean, I did have a couple days where I was like, because people, I always say that to people who either get terminated from their job, or everyone's always like, you'll be busy soon enough. Just enjoy it. And it's like the most difficult thing to do ever.
That's so hard.
I mean, it's true. You'll wish you had that time back, but I mean, you gotta have like nerves of steel to be able to enjoy unemployed time,
right?
Especially unplanned unemployed time.
Oh.
So if you can pull that off, I mean, more power to you. But I wasn't real good at the languishing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I quickly got pretty nervous and pretty, let's say, depressed. But it didn't work for me. I needed to stay busy. And the sad thing is, like, I had all these proactive things I wanted to do, and like my website's not where I want it to be, and all of a sudden I don't have time to do them. It's just like, it's true. You will get busy again. Try to enjoy the time, but I think that's pretty difficult to do.
Yeah.
If you're a productive person, your brain just will not shut off. And if you try to make it, the bad thoughts will come in, and it'll find something for you to worry about, right?
Right. I can see that. No, I think that's really cool. It's such an important thing. Yeah, entrepreneur or not, investing in yourself is always going to pay off, right? And so whether it's something just like fun that you want to do or some deep learning, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I noticed that in recruitment now too. Like there's a lot of conversations in the HR community and the recruiter community around, what should be on your resume. Because for a while there, back in the 80s, extracurriculars were on. Certainly for your first job.
Running and golfing. And
for your first job, the high school extracurriculars might be on there, and you might get asked about them. And then that sort of went by the wayside. But I think anything that makes you look well-rounded now is actually very valuable. Like resumes got really short and super professional. And now I feel like people want to see your human side a little bit more. And so I've talked with people who have asked, in one of my mastermind groups, like, should I keep my failed business on my resume? And it's like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
How much character did that build?
Yeah. Do you have any idea what you learned? And like 95% of them failed. Like if it didn't, you wouldn't be applying. They know it failed.
Exactly.
But like share those learnings. That's incredibly valuable. Like, you had a budget, you had a profit and loss statement, you have business experience. And like I said earlier, a lot of employees just literally don't understand how business works.
Yeah.
Like they literally don't know where the money that they get paid with comes from. Like they don't understand the machine, like it has to come in and then we do stuff and then we redistribute it to you.
Yeah. So it's the separation there.
It's kind of like the people who think that pork can be manufactured in styrofoam, like it's, I find, and not all employees, but I think a lot of them just don't think about it. And, why would they? But especially in large companies, it's just like, it seems like money grows on trees.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't. And I think if you have that understanding, you can be extremely valuable to an organization. There was a whole movement in HR for a while. Every HR person had the title HR business partner. And that's what the HR leaders were trying to get us to do. But I can tell you it was failing miserably. Now I'm an HR business partner because I understand business.
Yes.
But I didn't learn about business in my HR degree, so.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think life experience can be really valuable now. And so I'm kind of encouraging people, like, don't put on your high school volleyball team. But like if you do
recent.
if you do cool stuff or you turn around Europe or you were a digital nomad for a while, don't be ashamed. Like, those are all valuable experiences and make you a well-rounded person. And they build resilience, which is a really critical skill right now.
Yes.
Because look at how resilient we've all had to be. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really.
Like put to the test, right? So if you can show that you've seen some things, it's very valuable.
You've lived a life. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I would never have thought in Toronto, like if somebody had sheep farmer on their resume, I'd be like, what? Now I'd be like, wow.
Hire this person.
It's like
You
respect. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's good to be open-minded in your hiring too sometimes, I think. Yeah, things are changing so much.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And even, I mean, here, PEI is so much more diverse than it was when I grew up here.
Oh my gosh,
too.
yeah.
And I cringe at some of the old school hiring, like founders who are maybe still there on their way out, but they don't recognize the value in having a diverse workforce as well.
Yeah.
And the different,
Yeah.
learning and just cultural experiences and things like that, because they just don't have the patience to get
Yeah.
to know them. And that just like breaks my heart.
I mean, there's some slow learners, for sure. And this is just such a cutthroat market, though. I mean, it's literally going to be like the Darwin Award. Like, you will not make it. People will not work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly believe that. I mean, when I say like it's real, a lot of this is really, really, really positive, but the candidates market is actually a little bit frightening. So it's getting pretty tough. And I honestly don't know where all the people went, but I think that they've reduced the amount they want to work. They've changed the way they want to work, how they get there, where they do it from, and it's all just a little bit of a jumble right now. And we probably won't see any actual scientific data on it for any labor market studies for many years. We'll be way,
we have to
way past it by the
first to
time.
understand it.
Yeah, we understand what exactly went on. But I think if you're not aware, and if you see the turnover starting to pick up, you're going to have to do some pretty quick maneuvers, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Because it's changed more in 18 months than it changed in the previous 20 years. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to that far because that's how long my career's been. But I mean, probably...
That's substantial.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, you've heard of the Industrial Revolution? This is the candidate revolution.
Yeah. Huh. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, I have my pulse on TikTok, and that's what everyone's talking about on TikTok
She
right
knows.
now. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about that people are realizing their life that they can have at home and are not willing to give that up. And I do feel like there is something to say about that.
Yeah.
People realizing they don't want to spend 4 hours in a car traveling to work. And
Terrible.
stuff, and,
I know. Or, I mean, in a car, you're dreaming on public transit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at least in a car, you're alone.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Try like a bus, a train.
And you're like standing and there's people like
Yeah.
smushed against you. And
gosh.
I don't know if that happens now
And
with COVID.
I
but-
think as unintended as it was, we took the entire world's population and like dumped them in that. And then they're like, well, that was great. Like, it's because it's a collective. Like, they've all experienced it at once.
Yes.
Now they all want something different at once. It's
And for businesses to change at that rate is challenging too, right? But I think those who can allow their employees to work from home just like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Why does it matter where they are?
So how does that work from an HR perspective then too?
For employees working from home?
Yeah.
Well, they've already figured it out by now. I mean, I haven't had to manage employees. I haven't had to work
Hopefully.
from home for a company because I've been working. I mean, my clients are remote. Doesn't seem to affect them. I mean, I ask them about it and they're like, no, everyone's remote here. They're not going to care if they see you face to face or not. Like, they're all used to it. So I think a lot of companies have already been forced to figure it out very quickly. And I personally haven't had to make any of those arrangements or, like help clients through that. They're, by the time I went into this full time 3 months ago, they had that all figured out. But I think keeping it is different. I'm a person who actually never really liked working from home. I thought I would. And the few times I tried it, I missed my office and like the structure a little bit. Yeah. I like seeing the people in person, but I mean, I'm assuming that I am getting more used to it. In fact, I know I am because I deal remotely with like most of my clients right now are not on Prince Edward Island. And so I'm quickly getting used to it. It is different. But it will develop its own culture and way of being that everybody will adapt to.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think back in the day, I think at one point there were also some studies that showed that people who work from home actually put in more hours.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So, and I'm not encouraging that because I think you should put in the amount that's, healthy
you
for
get
you,
paid for
but that you get paid for. But I believe that that's true because I think they feel additional pressure to justify. And so it naturally motivates them actually to just be a little bit stricter. Like if you're in your office and you're shopping for shoes, you don't feel bad because everybody sees you're there. Not that I've ever
No,
ever
never,
done that.
Never.
Never do that.
But, you know, when you're at home,
Yeah.
you're like, can they see me?
Right.
You know?
Are they watching?
Yeah, you know, it's just kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
effect it has on you. But yeah.
Yeah.
You feel
Yeah.
justified sort of doing it. I'm going to take a break, you know, but
Yeah.
I'm still here, you know,
Yes.
and so, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that data would still be accurate, but back in like, you know, the early 2000s, the word was that they actually put in more dedicated productive hours than somebody who just knows they're there and everyone can see them and they don't feel that pressure to perform all the time. So
True.
hard to say.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing too about it is though, you got to also embrace and get over the guilt of not having your camera on all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard
that gets
like,
rough.
different leaders that I work with, they don't force their
Mm-hmm.
teams, you know, if they're having a team meeting or anything like that, like no one's getting forced to turn their cameras on or anything like that, which is really nice because like it's uncomfortable too, right? Like you might have just rolled out of bed. You might have like people in the background because you're at home and, you know, it's
Yeah,
just,
and time
you know,
zones. I mean, with
Yeah.
everybody in different teams. I mean, like I
Yeah.
have clients on the West Coast. Like I'm in my PJs. Like
Yeah.
sure, I'll meet at 6 p.m. your time, but like I'm going to bed right after.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
just showered. You know,
Yeah.
They're like, don't explain.
Yeah, you don't need to see this.
Leave the camera
You don't need
off.
to see this. Yeah,
But the
for sure.
really interesting thing for me is that I actually worked with some remote teams in radio. So I had a very dispersed client group, and part of my client group was Northern Ontario, and most of their leaders were based in Toronto. And when I did my master's degree, I actually used my client group for my study, and I did my thesis project, my research project was on, you know, whether employee engagement was lower in remote teams, and it was actually higher.
Cool.
Which was definitely proved me wrong. That was
Yeah.
not my hypothesis for my
Yeah.
study. But that's what I found. They were actually happier. So, I mean, there's no guarantee one way or the other. I think it just has a lot to do about the culture you create and
Yeah.
how you do that on Zoom. You know, it's obviously different than how you do it in an office, but you can find ways.
Yeah, if you're willing to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let go of what you've known. And I mean, everybody's had to, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff takes effort. It's not to downplay that it's easy to create a work environment that people love. It's definitely not.
No.
But I think a lot of people can probably make some improvements if they really think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some people who just aren't trying, and I wish
Yeah.
them luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be taking them on as a client.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to persist in doing things the way you used to do them, then I wish you luck.
Yeah. That's fair. I feel like we could sit here and talk all night,
gonna
but we
say.
probably shouldn't.
The closet's getting quite hot there.
Yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
up like 2 degrees every
It does,
20 minutes.
does. We'll get you back in the winter when it's not so hot. So maybe to round it out, you could just tell us a little bit more about your self-care practice. I know we've talked a little bit about like boundaries and like personal learning, but is there anything else that you like to do for yourself to really rejuvenate and restore?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm really excited to have time to read again. I hadn't read a book because most of my free time was spent knitting, to be honest.
Yeah,
because
yeah, I
had
guess with your
we had a knitting podcast. There was some pressure to produce something to talk about every 2 weeks. I missed books a lot. I recently took up the piano again not too long ago.
Yeah.
That turned out to be a little more frustrating than I was planning on, because apparently
self-care or self-frustration.
yeah, apparently after 30 years, your music reading skills are not where you left them.
Yes.
Despite what they say about learning things in childhood, you can't take that long of a break.
It's not
But-
like writing a book.
yeah, and then I have an accountability buddy, you know, all my friends and my romantic partner, you know, we're all accountability buddies, you know. He'll come get me and say, okay, it's our Saturday, and instead of like getting indignant and annoyed because I'm in the middle of something,
Right.
I'm like, yeah, you're right, you know,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be working right now. But, you know, a lot of the work I do, I find quite exciting and interesting. So sometimes it is hard to tear myself away, but I recognize that it's probably not going to pay off in the long run. So just take your weekend and enjoy it. And then, you know, I'm like a crazy relaxing bath person. At one point I was taking like 3 a day. Like,
wow.
like I love it. It's like
Yeah.
I'm like a mermaid or something.
Yeah.
So I pretty much, and if I need quiet time, I take quiet time. Like I don't feel pressure to do things with the family. If I don't feel like it, I make sure I see my friends. I have my priorities pretty well straight. I try to make sure that I get a chance to do all of the things that I enjoy, at least for a small period of time, and so that I don't lose touch with any of those things and forget, you know, what it's like, or can't carry on, like can't follow the book because it's been so long since I picked it up again. I make a point of getting a really good night's sleep. I'm a nightmare if I don't have sleep. And just like try to eat healthy. You know, I start every morning with a green Monster, make sure I drink all my water. If you're dehydrated, you're so tired and you don't realize it. And I just try to check in with myself and see how I'm doing. Like, I think just checking in with yourself and being like, what am I not doing for myself today because I've forgotten that I know I need. And then you know yourself. You know what you need. Write it down on a day when it's really clear for you.
Yeah.
And then look at that on the days when you lose sight of it.
Right.
It's like, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like,
pretty,
awesome. It sounds really high maintenance. Like,
but hey,
it takes a lot of work to keep this going, right? That's a lot of water, a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
But it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like today I was tired. I know I was dehydrated. Also, people, when you drink enough water, you look 10 years younger. Raisins versus grapes.
Yeah.
Get your water and it keeps you going.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I indulge myself quite a bit. And I will do spontaneous things. You know, like if it's like, can this possibly be put off to tonight and we can go to the beach because the weather has not been that great this summer? Yes. Okay. You know, we'll go. Be flexible about switching up your schedule if you have that ability, the ability to do that. Don't let everything pass you by because you of something that's not even necessarily urgent, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I love
That's
that.
amazing.
Very cool.
Awesome.
And so now that our listeners have gotten to know you, they probably want to know more. So where can they find you? Where's the best place that you hang out?
Or not. So, I mean, I would encourage everybody to find me on LinkedIn, Jennifer Doherty. I'm sure the spelling of my name is going to be somewhere on your...
I'll tag you.
In your description. And then, of course, I have a website that I already said I didn't completely finish the way I wanted to. But pretty much on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's your
and
favorite.
I love meeting new people. I love having chats about business. I do, through the Charlottetown Chamber of Commerce, I had offered to any members there a free 15-minute consultation. That offer is still active. If they happen to be a member, they can get on there, get my Calendly link, book a chat. Awesome. They're adding a lot of members these days, so probably like half the people listening to this are members. So you can go in there and find me in there too, in their member offers section.
Excellent.
And I'm happy to talk to anybody about what they're struggling with in terms of the HR function in their business, even if we don't end up working together. As they can probably tell by now, I love to chat about it. Yeah. So no pressure. Just give me a call and see if I can help you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in this very hot closet, Jennifer. It was really awesome getting to know you and to learn a little bit more of the world of HR. I know I need to really, look into that for myself as a solo entrepreneur. Yeah. So thank you so much for all of the knowledge.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
All right. I've really had fun. I've been looking forward to it and I knew it would be fun and it has been, and it's been so great getting to know you both too. So thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Awesome. And for you guys out there, please like, comment, share, follow the podcast. It does help us out greatly. And with that being said, I think that's another episode done.
Yep.
On Thriving Tides.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us, Thriving Tides, on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.